Netia Jones is an internationally recognized designer and video artist who works in opera, staged concerts, performance, and installation, using video, film, and projected media in all of her work. She comes to the Santa Fe Opera for the first time to direct Benjamin Britten's A Midsummer Night's Dream, and I'm happy to have her as my guest today. Welcome.
Thank you. What a pleasure to be here.
What draws you to a project in the first place, since you work in so many different mediums?
Well, I think that's the thing about opera, isn't it? Opera really is the ultimate multimedia kind of event. It draws on so many different things. And so, actually, when anybody approaches me about a project, there's usually a very, very quick yes or no, because I think if there's an imaginative connection to a piece or an opera, then it's inevitably a yes, because it's an incredibly rich undertaking from day one to the final day, and it goes through all kinds of different. Because I direct and I also design, it goes through all kinds of different permutations. So yeah, I mean, it's slightly to do with where it happens, and it's slightly to do with what it is.
And because this is Shakespeare as the root source, did that have, where had you sort of always been wanting to do something with Shakespeare and this came up?
Well, it's a piece that I've done before. In fact, I've done Midsummer Night's Dream, the play, twice, and the opera once before. And I would do it many, many more times were I given the opportunity, because every time you come to Midsummer Night's Dream, you find something different in it. It's one of the richest works ever created. It's a total joy to work on because it is so ambivalent, it's so open to interpretation. And so it's also a lot of fun. It's a fantastic, fantastic thing to have offered at the other end of the phone. Whenever that invitation comes in, this is a good day.
Now, this is your Santa Fe opera debut. You hadn't been to the opera before this production, so did knowing that the piece was going to be performed here affect the creative decision?
Yes, 100%. And in fact, shortly after we spoke about the project, in the very, very early days, I came to do, what is called a Recce. And it's actually a venue that you really have to do that before you embark on any part of the design or conceptualization, because it's so specific and because it's so special. And it's just incredible. And, how lucky am I? This is an opera which is 90% based out of doors. So these incredible things that you get here that you don't get anywhere else, which is an amazing landscape for at least the first half an hour or so of the opera, which takes part of your visual field, the weather, the all ever changing weather and spectacular displays, but also just details like there is a wind passing across the stage. You never get this in an enclosed theatre. And so when you're thinking about how to stage a Midsummer Night's Dream, it has a very wonderful gift, in the conceptualization process. And then also where we are, because New Mexico is so very much itself, it's such an unusual place that it felt it would be a folly not to engage in that in some kind of way. I don't think you can help it, actually. I think you just get that inspiration from being in a place and kind of feeling what it's like here.
I don't think I mentioned in the intro, you're the stage director, also scenic costume and production designer. So you obviously have a very strong visual concept in your mind when you come into it. Then you're in the rehearsal process with singer actors. And how does that collaboration influence the way it goes?
Yeah, it's a fantastic thing, opera, because it's totally collaborative. So although I am directing and I'm designing, actually it takes hundreds and hundreds of people to create an opera, and it's the most amazingly kind of human achievement because of the degree of collaboration it requires. And so I'm lucky because I'm in every department. So I have this amazing collaborative relationship with the performers, which is crucial to respond to, because performers bring so much to any role. And you must leave that interpretative space rather than try and shoehorn them into some idea that you may have had, because it has to be a two-way process. And that happens as well with the conductor. And so any, good conductor has this huge influence on how the rehearsal process develops. And then, of course, you have all the other collaborators. We have collaborators in the costume department, in the set building department, in the props, in the lighting department, in the technology that goes into any of these productions. And so it's an extraordinary army of talents, really, that come together to do this. And yeah, I mean, what better piece to do it on than Midsummer Night's Dream, where everybody is kind of able to step up and bring their ideas to the table.
I hadn't really thought of it before, but yeah, I mean, in a rehearsal, when you find a person moves a certain way, that definitely affects costume design, if nothing else. So since you're the costume designer, you can turn to yourself and change things immediately.
100%, and that's why it's efficient. So it sounds like it's not efficient, but it's wildly efficient. There isn't a process of discussion, and also it can be very fluid. And in fact, I've done that several times along the way for this production. I've really responded to the performers who were in the show, and there have been some changes, and so therefore I've also changed things up. We also lost the children. The opera is written for a chorus of children as fairies, and because of COVID, we couldn't have children in the show. And so that was a real pivot. Suddenly you're reconceiving the thing in quite a major way. And it's been very exciting. At the beginning, that was a little bit overwhelming. But as usual, some of these creative pivots force you to think really imaginatively. And I've been working with the amazing Professor Emma Smith at Oxford University, who's a leading Shakespearean scholar. And she pointed out the fact that actually Shakespeare's fairies would have been adults. He didn't have enough children in his team. He had however many boys, 2 or 4, but definitely not more than 4, and therefore the fairies would have been played by adults. So there's something slightly authentic in all of that, but it has been thinking on your feet at all times, and that's partly COVID, and it's partly the piece, and it's partly just putting on an opera production. Things change all the time, and you have to be kind of ready to go with it.
And some of the most creative work comes out of a challenge when you have to dig deep into the resources and come up with something that in many cases just ends up better.
I completely agree with that. And it keeps you thinking. And so you can never quite sit back, and neither should you. And it also is very nice to work with, all of these incredible talents. Santa Fe Opera really is a hotbed of talented people, and so you can bounce off them. So in the costume department or in the set building department, we bounce off each other. They come up with amazing solutions or amazing ideas for things, and I don't think you could do it in any other way, because it is a gigantic undertaking. It is a big deal to get these things from page to stage, and that kind of creative thinking, I think, is a very, very positive part of putting on a show.
What and this could be a long conversation, but what were some of the major challenges of working in this environment? The Santa Fe Opera is one of, if not the first company to stage major operas post-COVID, and we've all been waiting 18 months for this. What were some of the restrictions in rehearsals that you had to overcome?
I'm bowled over by the achievement of Santa Fe Opera. I think this is gigantic what they've managed to achieve. It's absolutely extraordinary. And to witness the preparation, I mean, the detail in the preparation, it's absolutely mind blowing. And so they've enabled us to carry on working in as close to a normal way as possible. So obviously, we're all masked in rehearsals, and that's very, very strange. So, as a director, when you're working with actors who you can only see their eyes, and it's made me be very aware of people's kind of eyebrows. We've been concentrating very much on what their eyebrows are doing, and then suddenly when they're on stage, because of this incredible preparation of the Santa Fe Opera, which has allowed us finally, when we get to stage, to have the performers unmasked, because they are rigorously tested and there are incredibly strict protocols, and they've thought the whole thing through to the most tiny, tiny detail, and it's been very, very well controlled, but not at all in an oppressive or an anti-artistic way, in a very, very enabling way. And so everybody has felt safe, which is again, quite a big thing after a year and a half of feeling fairly unsafe. And so it is an extraordinary moment when you've been rehearsing with, half a face. Suddenly these cast members are, they're strangers almost. It's like, oh, okay. But it's really, really fun. And, I mean, all power, to them, because they have managed to achieve this in this very difficult way. For a singer, I can't even imagine what it's like to sing in a mask. All through the rehearsals, they're kind of like gasping in the fabric of the material, and they've been incredibly good natured and positive and very, very hardworking. And I think, actually, as in all things, when there are restrictions, then when you have the freedom from any kind of constraints, you're all the more grateful. And the moment of joy when everybody started singing unmasked on the stage, it was intense and profound. And it's a very, very astonishing thing to have as well, the live orchestra and the live singers, and you realize how much you've missed it and how important it is, in our lives.
And uh, being in the theater, just the phrase "Welcome to the Santa Fe Opera" gets virtually a standing ovation. If performers haven't been waiting to come back, audiences have been needing this so much.
Yeah, we all have, and it's an absolutely wonderful thing. And and they've had already three openings, and here we are at the fourth. And yeah, it's completely amazing. And as I've said lots of times, actually, this piece is fantastic to be working on as a kind of coming back in after a long period away, because it's a play about playmaking. It's about the artistic process, and about rehearsals, and it's about kind of team spirit, and it's so warm. It's dark and it's warm, and it's a very interesting piece to be listening to and watching in these times.
Netia Jones is the director, scenic costume, and projection designer for Benjamin Britten's A Midsummer Night's Dream, the fourth and final production of the Santa Fe Opera's 2021 season. Tickets are available at santafeopera.org. And Netia Jones, thank you so much for joining me.
Great pleasure.